Do you have an official title?
Yes, I'm an advisor to the president.
In your months in Washington, have you found the establishment or the swamp, whatever you call it, more deeply entrenched than perhaps you expected? What would you say about that?
It is definitely an interesting environment to navigate, and these are early days in terms of my own experience. So, you know, I love to believe on a personal level that many of the issues I care deeply about should transcend politics.
All right, folks, welcome aboard. Steve Malzberg with you, and that, of course, was Sharyl Attkisson speaking to Ivanka Trump on Sinclair's Full Measure with Sharyl Attkisson, which airs on Sundays. Check your local listings. And, of course, Sharyl's also the author of The Smear, How Shady Political Operatives and Fake News Control What You See, What You Think, and How You Vote. That book is out on June 26th, which is next week. So a lot going on for you, Sharyl. How are you?
I'm great. Busy time, but all very interesting.
Let me ask you, in your sit down with Ivanka, somebody told me that Jared Kushner is part of the problem, as he sees it, because he's a very conservative American Jew and you know, isn't crazy about the thought of peace with the Palestinians, wants the embassy moved, etc. Jerusalem recognized as the capital. And he said that Kushner is one of the problems. And, you know, we hear a lot of these liberal policies and ideas coming from the mouth of Ivanka as well. Am I reading it right on Ivanka? And do you think, as much influence as she has, do you think her policy wishes will come to fruition?
That's a good question. I do think, I get the sense, if you have to label it, that a lot of her goals and special interests would be more progressive than not, but with a business angle to them and with practicality and cost in mind as well. And I do think she will have some influence. She's, you know, quiet and understated in person, but ever present if you look at the photos of their travel and, you know, where she is around the president. I do think she will have influence on the things she cares about, including, you know, things like the paid family leave and things that affect women and children, and things that liberals should actually like quite a bit. Yet I get the sense that they just don't want to say they like anything about the Trump administration.
Right. Yeah. There you go. So this family leave, which will be a huge government program, you think? I mean, Donald Trump might be on board with it, but you think that'll ever get through a Congress, a Republican Congress?
After doing stories lately, there's another one coming up in the fall, and I've done two in the past, interviewing current and recently former members of Congress who are blowing the whistle on themselves and saying, we will never cut spending. We will always add spending. We are very much in line with Democrats behind the scenes on a lot of these things because they're beholden to special interests who want money spent and who want programs. So I think something like that actually could get passed, depending on how it's crafted and who benefits from it, or who, you know, what special interests end up writing provisions into the bill that benefit them. Then I think, yes, it could get passed.
All right, so let's go to Georgia, 6th Congressional District. By the way, it's as if by this time of morning, it's as if that never happened, according to the media, the fake news media. They're on to back to Russia. But it was quite a substantial victory, margin of victory. I mean, I know it doesn't compare to Romney's 22-point win in that district in 2012. It does beat Trump's 1-point victory over Hillary just as recently as last November. So I think a 4-point victory, the Republicans will take it. They'll keep the seat. Donald Trump says that it's a rejection of the Democrat claims of obstruction. Others say it shows that they're on board with the Trump agenda of health care reform and tax cuts, etc. And then there are those who look the other way. How do you read the results?
I say that, gee, it's amazing that the Russians have been able to influence 4 special elections, and I sure hope somebody investigates that. I think Mueller's going to have his hands full.
That's a good one, and it fits in with it should fit in with their narrative. They should be calling for an investigation. Of course, they're not. But I mean, it does speak to something. Either the Democrats totally don't get it, and they and nobody cares about this Russian stuff. And also, trashing Donald Trump and calling him every name in the book isn't going to work. Or, as I alluded to earlier, that district at least, and maybe the other districts as well, are on board with the Trump train.
I think they are, and I will tell you, just based on the people I speak to, that's where I get a lot of just people around America, friends, family, contacts from all ilks. They don't much like what Republicans are doing either. So it's not as though the public is really thrilled with Democrats or Republicans in Congress, but a lot of them really don't like what's happening to Trump if they supported Trump in the election. And most of them, in fact, all the ones I measured throughout the election haven't changed their mind about Trump and are just madder at the media. And they're also mad at Republicans for not, they feel, standing up for him more. And they don't like the Democrats any better. But I guess in those districts, they're not ready to abandon Republicans altogether, as mad as they may be. They may still see them as a better choice over Republicans.
And what's with picking a Democratic candidate who doesn't live in the district, and B, I heard he claimed he had a top security clearance and told some fibs about some other things. And is that the best they could do? Somebody who can't even vote in his own election?
Well, I didn't study that race in particular, but considering the money spent, I liken it a little bit to the Hillary Clinton campaign, where she spent, just huge amounts of money, far, far outspent Donald Trump in every arena, and yet was not able to overcome, I guess, what you might call the people, who nonetheless wanted him over her. And same with this race. All the money spent, it used to be that almost guaranteed that you would win a race. The money's so important. But the fact that public opinion overcomes that kind of spending, I think, is a pretty important statement.
Speaking of Hillary, by the way, I do want to throw something at you. There's a report, and I've heard this over the past few months, and it just fades away. But now, Hillary Clinton, according to lawnews.com, still has a security clearance, and the State Department is now investigating. I mean, I don't know how common it is for ex-secretaries of state to keep a security clearance as a private citizen. Why they would need that, I have no idea. But especially, with the investigation that was launched and the words out of the mouth of candidate and President Trump about Hillary, how could she still have a security clearance?
Well, her investigation aside, I don't think it's that uncommon. I do know that people seek those jobs in federal government so that they can maintain their clearances in the private sector as they continue to work back and forth and contract with federal jobs and so on. But I think that's a legitimate question, how, if under investigation, and even if not under current investigation, just what they have found so far with the many hundreds, actually thousands of mishandled documents, including hundreds that were classified nature, sensitive, that were shared. That alone, I would think, under normal circumstances, would be enough to say this person isn't properly handling classified and sensitive material and shouldn't have that clearance. That's been proven in the past. But as we know, things are different depending on who you are. To my knowledge, I still go back to my knowledge, no law enforcement bodies investigated that shortly after Benghazi, a Hillary Clinton official, a deputy assistant secretary of state, basically, as he told me, walked in on a basement operation where they were separating out damaging documents of Hillary Clinton's that could hurt her. No one ever interviewed this man about it in law enforcement. No one ever checked out that operation. He named names. He had a lot of detail, and nobody cared, Democrats nor Republicans.
Yeah, well, it seems like there's more of that going on. And let me ask you this. Do you think we'll see, I know we're going to have a Senate investigation. I don't know if it's going to warrant a special counsel. Maybe you could tell me if you think it should. The Loretta Lynch revelations, not only, what she did on the plane with Clinton and not recusing herself, but then now we know she told the head of the FBI at the time, James Comey, on the eve of congressional testimony, oh, by the way, call the investigation a matter. And he just acquiesced because I guess he's, and that's who he is. Anyway, serious enough for some kind of special investigation aside from the Senate?
I think it should be looked into, as well as Comey's acquiescence, because that would seem to be some sort of alleged obstruction, at least by the standard that's been used to judge the other side. If he did what she said after stating that it would not be accurate if he called it that, and yet he did so. So all of those things are questionable ethical behavior at the very least.
And when you say should be looked into, are you talking about an independent investigation or just what's going to happen in the Senate and maybe the House?
Steve, it's hard for me to say because even these independent investigations, it's hard to know how independent any of them really can be. I certainly don't have more insight than anybody else on that. I tend to think there's hardly anything that's independent anymore, so I don't know what you do with that. You're either going to get, partisan slightly on one side or the other side, investigating their opponents and enemies. I just don't know what to say about that.
Let me ask you about the remarks that have been made in the wake of the Kumbaya show that took place after the shooting on the baseball field, and every Republican involved paired with a Democrat who appeared on all the shows saying, "Oh, both sides, it's it's all of us, it's both sides." And I wanted to jump through the TV screen, and then you get Joy Reid, for instance, who, as Scalise is laying there still in serious condition or critical condition at the time, I believe. Nonetheless, she was talking about how Scalise was shot by a white man with a violent background, saved by a black lesbian police officer. And then she went on to say that Scalise co-sponsored a bill to amend the Constitution defining marriage as between a man and a woman, voted for a bill to ban to repeal the ban on semi-automatic weapons, and saying these are things we can't ignore about him even as he lays in the hospital, which I just thought was horrific.
There are a lot of people in this country, at least public people, who speak out, who see fellow Americans as categories and not people. And they're the very ones who accuse the other side of making generalizations or being discriminatory, when in fact I think their behavior is in many cases horribly divisive and discriminatory and generalization and stereotypical. But they are not called on that because that's, for whatever reason, it's acceptable if one side does it and not the other. And on the Republicans and Democrats coming together, I would just say, observing over the years, the Democrats have a leg up on Republicans in terms of their public face and their approach. They rarely give in to the notion that they may have done something wrong or that there needs to be, that they need to compromise and go along with Republicans. Yet Republicans say that a lot. And so if you have Republicans that are often acquiescing or admitting blame, with Republicans rarely doing so, you can kind of see how that's going to end up. And I think that's the frustration I hear even from some Republican members in Congress who don't always agree with the tact that their leadership takes.
Yeah, and I assume that when you talk about Joy Reid, you consider her one of those who see people in categories and gets away with it because she's a liberal. Do you think her race plays into her getting away with it as well?
I feel awful, but I have no idea who Joy Reid is.
Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty good. She's Joy Reid. Joy Reid is on MSNBC, and she's the one who made those remarks. But that's good. I'm glad. You know what? Then there's hope. One more. Your show coming up on Sunday. I know you helped break the Fast and Furious story. It's now 7 years ago. We had an attorney general by the name of Eric Holder who was held in contempt by the Congress. A report just came out not too long ago talking about how how there was a attempt to cover things up, if not outright lie to Congress about the Fast and Furious investigation. And you are going to be talking with one of the agents who helped break that story, correct?
Yes, the agent who went on the air with me in a very bold, brave, public way 7 years ago on CBS News, because the government, after my first story, said, that's all a lie, it never happened. Sharyl's just got these anonymous, crazy sources, which is true. They were anonymous, not crazy, but I had about 10 people who had spoken to me, and I knew who they were, but I couldn't say who they were on camera at the time. And so the government said, none of this is true. Well, John Dodson stepped forward and said, here's my face. You're looking at me, and I'm not anonymous. You tell me I didn't do what you ordered me to do. I mean, it was an amazing moment for the story. The government ultimately had to admit it did happen, that, after saying it only happened by rogue agents in Phoenix, this went all the way up to people at the White House. It was very controversialized by opponents who tried to make it out to be some sort of political story. Of course, it was not. And to this day, documents are still being withheld in that case, all the way through Loretta Lynch, and now under the Trump administration. They are withholding documents from Congress that would continue to shed some light on responsibility and the bigger picture as to what was going on here.
And who in what division of the Trump administration is withholding these documents? The Justice Department?
The Justice Department and the State Department.
Why? I mean, you can only speculate, I guess, unless you have been given a reason. Why?
I think they've given reasons in court because this has gone into a court case, and I don't know all the reasons, but You know, some are supposed to be turned over. Some could be turned over immediately. It's been like pulling teeth. They gave 80,000, I think it was 80,000 new documents in recent months after all these years. I think, I'll just tell you that we got a little piece of the story. We never really knew in the big picture what was going on, and I suspect some of this operation crossed over into secretive things, perhaps CIA, cross-border operations, and I think on that basis, there's material they don't want us to see, but they never stated that. I mean, it'd be easier if they would just say so.
Right.
They never stated that.
Well, we look forward to Sinclair's Full Measure with you, Sharyl Attkisson. And, of course, don't forget, folks, go to Amazon.com and all over and pre-order the book, The Smear. Of course, next week, June 26th, you could buy it yourself, How Shady Political Operatives and Fake News Control What You See, What You Think, and How You Vote. Thank you, Sharyl. Speak to you soon.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, folks, thanks for being out there. And don't forget, in the meantime, stay informed at newsmaxtv.com and the website, newsmax.com.